And a very good evening to you, and welcome to Politics 101 on a Friday night. Wherever you're joining us from, welcome. Welcome to Politics 101. You're joining us from in Guyana or outside of Guyana. Welcome to Politics 101. It's a Friday night, it's the end of the traditional work week, and we're going to continue our coverage here on Politics 101. What a week it has been. What a week it has been. It's a good week to have been alive in a place called Guyana. And those of us who from time to time have urged that we stay with the struggle and that we do as much as we can do to prepare for moments. In many regards, we've been vindicated. As I said, when we came off the air last Friday, if someone had told us that a high court judge in Guyana would have hauled the CEO of the Ministry of Education before his court for contempt, but more than that, if anyone had told us that by the end of the week, the court would have ordered a mediation, we would have told them no. No. And that is why Frederick Douglass's quote, that power concedes nothing without a demand, never did and never will. And that there's some of us who want to reap the fruits of struggle without struggle. The teachers went onto the streets against all odds. They came off the job against all odds. The government was beating them up, but they stayed for the first 2 weeks, and they stayed. And look where the struggle is today. If this process yields the results that the teachers and other lovers of freedom want, we would be singing hallelujah. Thanks to the teachers for opening the gate. This morning I was on a program in the Caribbean, and they asked me to say what's happening with the teacher strike. And when I said what was happening, the moderator said, wow. Because it may, and we're going to have Khemraj Ramjattan on tonight. He hasn't been here in months. And Khemraj is backstage and ready. And I'm going to ask him, I was trying to remember whether there was any precedence for what Justice Kissoon has done in Guyana. And I couldn't find any. And I was searching for the last day or two to see if there was precedence in the English-speaking Caribbean, and I couldn't find any. But Khemraj is going to be on tonight, along his brother, AFC member, our regular Friday night guest, Dr. Vince Adams. Dr. Vince was, he was out last week. He had stuff to do. And Nemo Flubes kept the ball rolling. And tonight, Khemraj is here with him. So we are going to be talking about the developments in that teacher strike. As you know, both Vince and Khemraj also have an interest in what's happening in the oil industry. We had that ruling from the court in the matter that was taken by Danuta Radzik and others as regards EPA and the Exxon. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And there are other developments which we'll talk about. I forgot to apologize to you all for yesterday. I was hoping against all hope that we could have made it yesterday, but in the end, we couldn't make it. I want to apologize. As you know, 2 weeks ago, I did. We're putting the on. As you all know, 2 weeks ago, I did the procedure in my right eye, and I came on here looking all kind of cute. Yeah, it was on with Vince Adams, looking kind of cute in my fancy glasses. And yesterday I did the left eye, and I was hoping that I could have made it on last night, but wasn't feeling up to it. So that is the reason I wasn't on. For all of you who emailed me and texted me to make sure that everything is all right, I thank you so much. my God, things have really changed. Times have changed. You know, we're off, and literally scores of people texted me to find out if I'm okay. The swiftness of our communication these days, but more than that, the concern that our people have. Yes, I am okay. As you notice, I haven't come out with my cute glasses tonight, but I'm okay. I was telling some friends today that I feel like I have 2 new torchlight. Not the torchlight that you all accustomed to these days. Vincent and Khemraj would remember them old big torchlight. Sometimes used to get 2 big batteries. Sometimes used to get 4 big battery. Them old. I feel like I get 2 new torchlight now. Thanks to all of you who wished me well, and now it's the recovery time, but it doesn't prevent us from working. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much, and welcome to Politics 101 on a Friday night. If you're a teacher, wherever you are, welcome to Politics 101. If you're from the quarantine, welcome to Politics 101. Khemraj, as you know, is a quarantine man, and he's here. He hasn't been here for a while, but he's here. And Vince, as you know, what kind of man? Not Linden. Christianborg. You gotta be careful, you know. It's like the village I come from. It's all right to say you're from Buxton, but if you're from Buxton, back damn side, it's a different story from the rest of the village. And like me, I'm from what you call Bottom Station, because the train station used to be there, and just you come down the step of the train station, you get a whole set of little house on what was then called Station Street. But don't ask any Buxtonian about Station Street. Bottom Station. So when you come down there, we live at the bottom of the station. So as a bottom station man, and if you're the bottom station man, then that's where all the action was. I remember, of course, our house was so small, and I had an auntie who, when you do anything wrong, and she ready to abuse you, the whole neighborhood hearing. So when I started going to high school, me and my cousin Orin Garden, who is up there at Linden, the former mayor of Linden, my cousin, we grew up in the same yard and the same house. When we come from school early, all the rest of the children from BV and Pleasance and Golden Grove and so on got come at the train station to catch train in the afternoon. So when we come home, we never used to go home. We did the train station with them, because we don't want, first of all, them to know where we live in, because the house is small, bad. And we don't want to get on the wrong side of Auntie Cecilia, because when she started to cuss, we friend them from school would hear. So we either used to stay back to school late, play cricket or something, and come home after 4, and that get its own abusing. Or we come home early and line with we out to the village friends then, because we don't want them to know where we live in. Little did we know, by the time we get out of first farm, second farm, third farm, you become a little bit more conscious, and you have a sense, so you stop shaming of you for your little house and so on. Little did we know, we friends already know where we used to live. But those were the days, eh? And those were the days. I mean, if you're 10, 11-year-old starting high school, you don't want people to know how poor you are. Little did we know that all of we were poor. All of us were poor. Welcome to Politics 101. We're going to roll tonight. Please share the link and everybody know that we are on. As I said, what a week it has been. What a week it has been. What a week it has been. When you are in this political thing long enough, one of the things you learn is never to get in front of the struggle, never to doubt your own supporters, never to doubt human beings. They will do things that surprise us because that's the nature. That's our nature as human beings. And so many of us have been calling for boots on the ground, boots on the ground. What's happening? What's boots on the ground? And now we have boots on the ground. But not just boots on the ground, but boots on the ground that are trampling so hard that they're making the democratic system kick into gear. Kick into gear. You know, we've been talking about the three branches of government, the three co-equal branches of government. And, you know, I've been talking to teachers behind the scene and so on. I consider it to be part of my job. And one of the things that all the teachers I talked to for the last couple of days have been asking me, Dr. Hines, can the court really mediate between a union and the government? Is it for real? We thought it was only the Ministry of Labor could mediate. The court do that? The court do that? And so it's a moment also for our people to brush up on civics. Because one of the things the teacher strike is showing us, it is the need for workers, for citizens, for the new and the younger generation to understand how the political system works, to understand what's the role of the courts, what's the role of the executive branch, etc., etc. This is a struggle you're in. You're in with some people who are prepared to push the envelope. After the judge issued his order, you see what the ministry did? They defied the court. And they could have gotten away if it was a weak judge. But it's a strong judge, and the judge called them, take down the pants and bust their ass in public. That's what the judge do. Bust the tail in public. The rest is history. It's a wonderful thing to be alive. If you're a teacher, say, yeah, 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 yeah. Because you've made something happen that I don't think has happened, certainly not in post-colonial people. But I will ask Khemraj. All right. A couple of things. Amanza Walton was on this program earlier this week, and she and Dr. Jeffrey had an exchange. Some of you remember it. We were talking about constitutional reform, and Amanza argued that in addition to constitutional reform, we have to have people respecting the present constitution, and that we have to get leaders who are able to do that. And in subsequent programs, I gave the impression that she was against constitutional reform, and that is incorrect. She did not express opposition to constitutional reform. But she said, in addition to constitutional reform, the present constitution has parts of it that are laudable, and that we have to have leaders who are prepared to honor what is put down on paper. So I just want to apologize to Amanza for misrepresentation or simplification of our position. It was a much more nuanced position than I made it out to be in subsequent programs. Thank you very much for those of you who have drawn that to my attention. And I apologize sincerely to Amanza. She'll be here next week, and we'll get a chance to patch up and make up and so on and so forth. But sometimes, you know, we run off of the mouth, and not that I meant any harm, but my sympathy was more with the Jeffrey position. So I appear to give short shrift to Amanza's position. My apologies. My apologies. Thank you. All right. So let's get going. I think most of you all are ready. Saddle up. As you know, on this program is partly school, partly night school, because we're learning all the time. And, there are lots that we are going to learn tonight, as usual. Partly mobilization, because we are mobilizing politically and socially on a program like this. Every now and again, we give some red meat, but, it's not really the typical red meat program. But sometimes, what they say in the villages, sometimes I get a little ignorant. And we do a little partisan red meat and so on. It's not that I'm against partisan red meat, but if all we do the red meat, then what happened to the blue meat? Blue meat, you all want to know what's blue meat. If you're from a place called Bachelor's Adventure, next door to Buxton, Bachelor Adventure Paradise, train knocked down an animal the night. Them tell you on that electric light, the whole village come out, they cut up meat, and they gone home. Some of them start bile. Then they wake up the next morning, the meat blue is donkey get knocked down on the train light. The thing was cow, and they bile up the donkey meat. Apparently when you buy donkey meat, you get blue. Till up to this day, they call people from Bachelor Adventure Paradise blue meat people. So we can't do red meat all the time. We gotta do the blue meat sometimes, and so forth. But thanks to you who have shown faith with us and recognize the diversity in approaches to the same problem, to the same problems. Look, my partner and them who are on twice this week, Mark and Rick Ford, they were teasing me about my friend who I had on a couple of weeks ago. My friend who is Ramjattan friend too, Donald Ramatar. I had him on, I think twice we had Ramatar on. We were talking about what's happening in Gaza, and Mark and them were teasing me about my friends. But I mean, the thing about Guyana is we are a small society. I know Donald and things since I was a small boy coming into politics in the 70s. And while we weren't friends who would call one another every day, I mean, over the period of time, we have remained friends, and people like Donald Ramatar and Clement Rohi, even Ramjattan. Well, Ramjattan is me grow match, so he would have come into politics at the same time. And those guys, Gail Tashir and them, they were my good buddy friends. They had a thing called Worker Stage. It was a drama group, a PPP drama group. I left Buxton, me, Sir McGarriel, and Busty dead and gone now. The true we left Buxton and we went to Freedom House and said we are interested in multiracial politics and we want to join Worker Stage. And we join Worker Stage and go up and down with the PPP group, from Lil Baibu to Big Baibu to all quarantine all over the place. We went and, so people like Ramatar and Gail and Rohi. Navin is dead now, but his wife Indra and so on. Those are people who I go back with from time I was a boy. And one of the things you learn in the village that you and the mother, your mother and the mother may not be on talking terms, but that don't mean that you and the children can be on talking terms, So no, and I think we recognize that we're all a small society, and you'd be surprised at the personal relations that exist between and among people of the different parties in Guyana. So here we are. Okay, let's roll. Let's roll. Good evening to you all. And you all there. I notice a few benches are still empty, and the front benches are still empty. All the back bench full, and people standing up at the back. They got a couple of benches in the front. The Black Americans will tell you, as Dr. Vincent would say, "Come to the front." Rosa Parks, sit down so that you can sit down on the front. You know, you're going to a classroom, you're going to go the back seat. All right, let's get rolling. Let's get rolling. Khemraj, I know you're an old cricketer. Is your Gandhi GYO man, right?
Yeah, Gandhi Youth
Gandhi
Organization.
and Anand Gulsaran was MYO or GYO?
No, GYO, captain,
GYO,
president,
GYO.
and
A lot of people don't know he was a cricketer, you know.
yeah, but I wasn't a good cricketer at all. I mean,
But
so
but,
don't
but you
we'll talk plenty about that. Talk about Vince. Vince
oh
was
yeah,
a set of Guyana.
yeah. Vince was a cricketer. Yeah, I too. I was a commentator.
Oh
Me,
yes, I
yeah, me
didn't
and my
know.
friend Bacchus. I was a respirator, and my friend
That.
Bacchus was Tony Kojo, and we go wherever the school team go in, and we commentate. And so on. Brothers, it's good to have you all on tonight.
Nice being on again, Doctor. I'm sorry I missed you last week.
Well, I bring Khemraj tonight. I know it's your comrade.
That's right.
No comrade tonight. Tonight.
Here now,
Yeah.
Doctor. For full disclosure, of course, I'm sure that Khemraj would express the same sentiment. We wish we had the Donald in charge instead of this bunch of folks. I gotta give you a funny story though. So Donald and I, we've always been friends. So I would go home, and me and Khemraj, of course, always were friends. So me and Khemraj would go and have a beer the night before, and then I would tell Khemraj I got tomorrow going to see Donald, and then he would cuss down Donald, and then I would go to Donald and I say, I'm running to a friend last night. He said, you see what your friends are doing to me, and you start off on camera. Hey, but let me tell you something about the decency of that man. When I was up here and I was still working with the government and stuff, and even though he was on the PBP side and he knew that my political persuasion was, every time Donald came into the country, he contacted me, and if I could make it to Washington or Atlanta, wherever I was, he always wanted me to be with him in his meetings or whatever function he had, and he would put me to sit at his table. I even give some vote of thanks speech for him, but he never one day asked me to join his party or to come over to his political association. Never one. He respected where I was, and everything I told him, the same advice I gave to Khemraj and those folks, he and I would have that conversation. And he was fine with it. He respected that, and we remained friends.
Khemraj, you still have friends in the PPP, I would imagine. Close
Yeah,
friends.
I got quite a lot of friends, as a matter of fact, and it might surprise you that now and again when I do meet Bar Jagdeo, he always wants to chat. Come, practice, come. Let's have a chat. You gotta support the budget because this is, and you would start laying down a lot of the reasons as to why I must do that. He hardly is inside of the parliament, but outside he comes, and you would sit around, and when you pass, saying, "Come, let's have a chat." And quite frankly, I make use of the opportunity to go to him and shake his hand and have a chat now and again. And of course, when I feel like it, I'll abuse him down and tell him what nonsense he doing, what stupidness he talking in the television programs, why you trying to confuse people. And he would smile. And sometimes he attacks me pretty brusquely and sometimes very viciously. And I would say, well, you had to do that. He said, man, nothing personal. That is politics. And, that's how I deal with all of them. And that is why I've continued to maintain a tremendous relationship with almost all of them, inclusive of Bar Jagdeo. Although I must say that out of the lot, he is the least in that sense, being the word decent when it comes to showing respect. He would tell you that I'm going to blaze you tonight, and he would go and do it. Donald is a different kettle of fish completely. Donald is far more respectful, decent, and you can add the word noble to it. But Jagdeo, he takes a liking to being destructive and aggressive and vicious. And I think that is what has made him. And quite frankly, he feels good in that kind of framework as against anything else.
Yes, Khemraj Ramjattan and Vincent Adams here tonight. Khemraj, of course, former top PPP man. I first got wind of Khemraj when he was in the PYO. And then, of course, when he dared to challenge the building block of the PPP, you have to take Marxism, Leninism out out of the Constitution. Khemraj, I have to confess, but that up to that time, I said, no, man, Khemraj is wrong here, you know, because, you know, coming out of the Marxist Leninist school of thought, you know. But later on, I came to understand what is it you were trying to do. And the PPP, you've been proven correct, because although the PPP haven't taken it out from the Constitution, they take I don't think even you wanted them to take out as much as they took out.
That's right. They have gone ultra extreme now. And that is the shocking thing that has made me so mad, especially with Jack Deo, because he's the one that is pushing them to that extreme. Although on the other day when asked about communism and Marxism, Leninism, he said he's going to leave that for the members of the party. He's the member that really caused that to stay on there. When in the, remember the 2002 Port Morant Congress, I asked he cussed me down. And he said a whole set of things that we don't want to change constitution and this and that and whatever. It's a terrible thing to be that kind of a character, so much that could talk to you with one side of the mouth and then on the next day talk to you next side. It's an amazing thing. And he does it with a straight face. This fella. This man is amazing. With
an innocent looking face.
Baby face, so innocent, and that is what has carried him, to where he is. Quite frankly. Duplicitous and very, very full of hypocrisy all the time, just like decency and so on. But
they've moved from one extreme of communism to the other extreme of fascism.
Yes,
that's what
that's right. Right.
Yeah. And I remember Boyo Ramsarup, who I also knew was a small boy when I went into the PPP. They used to have a lot of, Khemraj may remember, a lot of fundraising at Boyo's house and so on. And we used to go there and thing. And
that's a Section K Campbellville group.
Yes, I actually lived in that house later on. Next door to what's his name, mother, the Ano guy, Prior Jonah's son.
Yes, right.
Right. That's where Boyo lived.
Timothy Jonas.
Yes, And I remember Boyo jumping out of his car on Cherry Street one time. He saw me and he said, "David, come. They got a little boy in the PPP named Jack Deo." And Khemraj trying with it. But I want to ask you a favor. Say, what, Boyo? He said, "Join the PPP now, man." I said, "Wait." He said, "Because that boy need people like you for put in the place. Khemraj alone and able with it." They said, and Boyo said, the man behaving like a king. He's a blind man, and he behaving like a king in a blind man country because everybody else is seeing in the thing. And he said, Khemraj and able join the party, not David.
But even Janet, Khemraj would tell even Janet didn't able with it.
Oh yes, he threw Janet out. I remember him telling her, "Please shut up." I was next to him in that Central Committee room. He told Janet to shut up, and you are no longer in what he told her. Told her to shut up, and you are no longer you're a private citizen now.
Private citizen. This was in relation to the established.
And the lady came down from the Oxu Committee room, never again to go to Freedom House. And he is in his inauguration had told the whole country that Janet will forever be his president. And that's the treatment he gave to her. That is why today I generally ask Irfan Ali, Why you don't have the balls to tell him, please get out of the place. You're a private citizen now.
Yeah.
But you're gonna make him, what do you call this, vice president.
Yeah. Khemraj, let me ask you this. I mean, you're a quarantine man, and if I know anything about the quarantine people are quarantine people. I always say, whenever I go to the quarantine or I go to Essequibo Coast, in many regards, it's like I'm in two different countries that are different from Demerara. There's something about the Essequibo Coast and the quarantine coast. I mean, I grew up in a party that had one vehicle, which was a tapir. And I used to be amazed that I go to quarantine, tapir was still running and so on. And you're a country boy, you know, from the quarantine. When you go back there now, I mean, here you are coming up in the PPP, born and bred in the PPP, left the PPP for stated reasons, public reasons. It wasn't anything private.
I was expelled, you know. I was expelled.
Expelled, not left. Expelled because they say you were taking secrets to, was the Americans or the Canadians?
The Americans and Stabrook News.
And Stabrook News. and when you go back, what do people tell you? Because I would imagine a lot of those people you would have grown up with or who would have helped to grow you are still sympathetic to the PPP. What was
yes, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, when you go there, they appreciate that what you did, and you did it for good reason. But they will always tell you that, you know, we got a political movement that brought us from where they were, and that, of course, is the People's Progressive Party. The bastion of support for the PPP is always Berbice. But of recent times, I have been making the argument that the PPP that we know today is not the Jaganite PPP. So make that distinction and difference. And I think there is an element of especially young people who appreciate that. And a lot of these other middle-aged people now are coming around because they see for themselves that indeed the PPP that they knew from Janet and Chetty and even Donald to a certain extent is vastly different now from what the PPP has here, especially with oil monies, because we always used to suffer this point that we ain't got money. So what Chetty was trying to do was to help out everybody. And so you're not going to build plenty roads, or you're not going to build that bridge yet, and so on and so on and so on. But when compared to what we got now, so much money, a number of them have now come to realize, you know, it's damn true that we are not getting a good deal with this People's Progressive Party. And I rather suspect that the majority of them out of that lot that is telling me that there is difference and so on, may very well still go and vote for them. My task is to ensure that they don't go and vote, because as I've told any right-thinking person, the minute that those people go into the ballot box and they vote and they see the cup, there is an automatic thing about it going straight to the cup.
Yeah,
so always instead of going to vote AFC. And it is a tremendous misfortune that I had, that I tell a couple of my villagers after I created the AFC, go and vote. I had about 82 members in my village because everybody wanted to join the AFC, Ramjattan Farm Party and so on. And when the elections come around by at the school and at the health center, there were 2 ballot stations there. And from the 88 members that you got from these 2 or 3 villages, 33 people vote for you. So I wanted to roll on to the 50. And they start to watch you sideways. And when you confront them and you shift their face back and say, watch me, they indicated, man, me no know how my hand is go there. And it went back to the cup, you know. And I said, but you know, but I like them. As a matter of fact, love them because they were pretty frank with me. And it is a truth that happens as I have now become far more mature, a broader reader and all of that. That happens in race-based politics and polarized political scenes, or even religious-based societies too. They somehow go back on that hour, at that minute, back to their cultural identity or political identity or their whatever.
David, I have been with him to the quarantine, and let me tell you something. Yeah, I mean it's a show. When Khemraj go, you should hear he's cussed them out. He said, "Yeah, yeah, so and so. I mean, you know the R word,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah."
yeah.
And y'all coming and complaining to me. And because of what we do, you can go and vote for them still. You can go.
Well, I think it was that same 51. We had a strong WPA group back there in the 1980s
Yes.
and so on. And
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm trying to remember a couple of the members' names. Most of them are dead now, but we had a very
Johnson's,
strong.
Melville's, and so on.
Ah, yes, yes, yes. And in 1992, I think we had about 9 people on our list, and we got about 3 votes from the village, which means 6 people who were candidates for us and vote for us. So we go in Rupert now, and the village of Rupert said, you cost them just like. What happened? Man tell Rupert, he said, Doc, me go in a booth, me want vote for you. One couple, you get a magnet, you drag.
Form 3, yes.
Oh my. Khemraj, let's start the conversation, because I say it's a good week for Guyana. It's a good week for the rule of law. It's a good week for oversight. Government oversight is a good week for judicial review and all the other topics that we can talk about. We know the story. Everybody knows what has happened. The teachers went to court. The judge stopped them from taking out the teachers' money. They put out a memo. They called them back, contempt of court, and then the judge said mediation, which started yesterday. Today, I just read that it continues next week. Has that ever happened in Guyana before, Khemraj, where the court has stepped in an industrial battle and say, you're not settling and we're going to mediate this thing?
Well, not in the context and the set of circumstances that we saw here with Justice Sandil Kissoon. I think it's unprecedented. And of course, you're never going to get a square on kind of scenario that is equal with what happened here in previous times. I remember when we were doing the GPSU litigation, I was the lawyer for the PPP at that point in time,
1999.
Yes, in 1999. I was the lawyer for the PPP. And indeed, when the ruling was had and all of that from Ian Chang, there was what is called arbitration, and it led to the Armstrong arbitration. Ian Chang had indicated to both set of lawyers, similarly to what I think would have been recorded publicly here by Sandil, asking that there be 2 senior counsel. But he had indicated, please, y'all take this thing. You don't want GRA not to be collecting taxes, nurses on strike, and all GPSU members. And so arbitration was then, as a result, come into being. Similarly here, I think this judge wants a similar situation, but it is the hard earsness of Jagdeo and the government and the Ministry of Education and so on. And so that is why I think he went a step further to order that there be mediation, and the mediators will be 2 persons that the court will appoint, as against an Ian Chang scenario, who was just saying, let's get to arbitration. So it is unprecedented. And I must say that I have gotten tremendous respect, not that I did not. He is always a bright fellow, Sandil Kissoon, but tremendous more respect for the independence that he's taking, and what we lawyers call judicial activism.
Yeah.
He just don't go and just interpret the law and say, hey, this is the law. This is a person that is willing to take the bull by the horns and say, well, look, I want to see that students get back tutoring from teachers. The teachers are out on strike. Please, how could we get this thing? Well, if you can't get the Ministry of Labor to work out an arbitration or conciliation, I have the power that is inherent in him as a judge. It is inherent in him to ask for mediation, and I will appoint the mediators. And he did so, and it's two very powerful names. The PPP can't argue against Eddie Lakou, nor could they argue against, who is the other one?
Stobie.
Yeah, right. Robin Stobie.
Robin.
Those are quality senior counsel, and they have been taken by the PPP government as their lawyers in many cases. So it is important that the PPP now utilize it and as an opening for further conciliation and probably arbitration, so that there is not a substantive ruling that indeed this thing was unconstitutional. Because I believe that if the PPP could read the writing on the wall, it is very well be that this is going to be held as unconstitutional. Yeah. This way they acted, and that action brought by Darren Wade, that indeed it is unconstitutional. That will be worse off. It's better you take a step now away from that court corridor and go on to arbitration via this mediation level, and so that we can get some resolution to the problem.
Yeah,
Vincent, Khemraj and David, would you guys? I don't know if you look at the vice president press conference. He's denying that this happened. Did you see? You see what he said that Darren Wade, that Wade didn't win any case, and it was some mumbo jumbo nonsense that he's coming up with to spin what took place. I mean.
No, he does not understand these positions, and especially law. He never liked lawyers, especially lawyers that dissent with him. As a matter of fact, when he takes a lawyer, he literally tells the lawyer what I want you to argue, rather than taking the professional advice of the lawyer. And that is what Barrett is. Absolutely, authoritarian. And this obviously must be true, because I didn't listen to his speech, but it could very well be that he would want to twist what the conservatory order is. A conservatory order that was applied for by Darren Wade is an interim preliminary order whereby he is asking the court, do not allow a deductions by this CEO, now that he has sent around this thing and all that. And, prior to that, and also not to for them to continue to deduct the union dues and pass it on to the trade union. That is like a conservatory order, an interim injunction. In the meantime, as we are going to hear the substantive matter, please allow it. And the judge granted that. It is like an interim injunction. All right? Now, once you get an interim injunction, it becomes a court order that could be enforced by that court via the contempt and committal proceedings. They could jail you. They could hold you in contempt and all of that. The CEO probably went and take instructions from Bar Jagdeo, or whosoever is the senior leaders of that party, or probably Anil Nandalal. He then went on to go and talk about that he got his instructions wrong, and now the Attorney General is saying that he probably did not hear my advice properly and all kind of nonsense. They were getting the licks of Lisbon. That fella, Saddam Hussein. And the Saddam Hussein, I'm glad that he behaved himself in court like that, because that judge would have jailed him. He was by the skin of his teeth almost into the Georgetown prisons, knowing Sandil Kisoon. And so he was very lucky when he took the advice of Anand Nandalal to say, I am sorry, sir, I apologize, I never intended it this way. He was very, very lucky, because he would have been in jail today. Yeah. So it is important that people understand this was an interim order. And even if Barrett does not understand it, well, at least he should understand it now. But he's going to go and tell his base support, his red meat areas, that no matter that there is nothing there, we still got the substantive matter. And
that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying.
Silly. He does not. And I had a problem with him as president of the bar when he had done something in relation to the Bar Association, And although I was a leading member of the PPP, he cussed me down as president of the bar for supporting the Bar Association in an interim injunction matter. Something similar. I think it was with Guy Suko, where the DDL blocked Guy Suko's sale at the Skeldon estate. They wanted to sell out something at Skeldon, And the DDL, because DDL was collecting the molasses there to make their special rum, they brought an injunction. And he was vexed with me because I supported the lawyers and so on. So he's never a rule of law man.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact,
that's
the way he
rule of
governs.
man.
That's the way he governs, Khemraj. That's exactly the way.
I suppose he learned that in Moscow. As a matter of fact.
Khemraj,
That is what they teach you there at that Soviet times.
Khemraj, you went to Patrice Lumumba?
No. I went to University of London. University of West Indies in London.
You didn't go to Moscow.
No. I think that is the cultural.
But I've got to say this.
Yes.
Judge Kissoon.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so impressed with the guy. I hope that he's got good security, by the way, because you talk about the courage of this guy.
Yeah.
In terms of his rulings. I mean,
That's right.
look at, he couldn't get a bigger case even than the parent company guarantee case.
That's
That
right.
was a big case. And now this, the guy, and everything he says, it makes it, to me, it is sound. And it's the way he lay out his justification. Absolutely sound, at least from my thinking. So
Look, he got pedigree, he got pedigree. Almost all his family members is the Kissoons.
Oh, it's not from that
Jailal
Kissoon family,
Kissoon and
Jailal and them.
Kissoon.
Okay.
Yes, right.
Okay.
And he's married a good friend of mine too, who's also a lawyer, Vidyanand Prasad's daughter.
Oh.
And so I suppose, when you live in that kind of a community of lawyers, as it were, you're going to know the law. And he is a pretty smart guy. So he knows what he has to do, and he's going to rationalize all his decisions with tremendous exposition of the law and reasoning and so on, legal reasoning. So Jagdev must learn to understand that, these fellas were appointed because they're quality material to become judges. And now you just don't go and try to diminish the decision and the judicial or the jurisprudence that the man is talking about, the judge is talking about.
Vince, you and I would have gone to school in the United States at the time when Thurgood Marshall was still on the bench, and Khemraj referenced the Marshall principle that the role of the Supreme Court judge, the role of the judge is to expand rights, not to contract rights. And he saw himself as a judicial activist.
That's right.
Who saw the Constitution as a living thing that needs always to be kept alive and not as a dead thing. And one of the criticisms I have had of our jurisprudence in Guyana and the English-speaking Caribbean is conservative approach. I think, for example, if you had the Thurgood Marshall / Kissoon, Sandy Kissoon approach to the law, the 2020 thing would have turned out differently. I think the 2020 impasse that we have suffered from the fact that our jurisprudence was conservative and didn't recognize the larger impact. So here is Justice Kissoon, who is saying, but this is a strike, but this has to do with children. It has to do with their exams. It has to do, the court cannot stand by.
That's right.
Just walk the straight line and not invoke its overview, role. And Khemraj, I want you to weigh in on that, because the judge, I don't have it in front of me. The judge relied on a certain statute. Is it statute or a constitutional requirement?
In which case? In this strike case?
In the strike case. What is the authority relied on to play the mediation role?
No, it is part of the inherent jurisdiction of
yes, you did say that.
And that would be inside of the High Court Act, as it were.
There you go. That's
and
what
the general common law position surrounding what's the role and function of a judge. But also, there is a great tradition that was built up by a fantastic judicial activist out of India. And I know that Sandhil Kissoon and his father and all of them used to argue about this, and because I'm pretty close with them too. Chief Justice Bhagwati.
Ah, yes. Yes.
That was a judge that says that, look, I remember there was a classic example of what he did. A man borrowed some money and he wrote his little promissory note that he should be paid back. And the person that borrowed the money was saying that, hey, I did acknowledge there, but the thing ain't got a stamp. And to make this document valid, you got to put a stamp on it. Well, it was not valid, so I'm not paying you back. So Chief Justice Bhagwati called up for the document, and he took out a stamp from his drawer, look it up, paste it, and say, well, make your argument now. There's a stamp there. Because it was so unjust to make that argument that because it didn't get a stamp, I ain't going to pay you back. And so that is the kind of activism that good judges that understands the law, the kind of Lord Denning scenario.
Yeah,
Denning was that kind of judge. And I think that this pattern has gotten far more progressive, especially with the younger generation of judges. And I rather suspect that they're going to like that kind of attitude towards jurisprudence and the law, as it were, and how to effect enforcement and all of that immediately. Because the enforcement and the respect for the judiciary is gathered by exactly what Sandil Kisoon did there. Nobody now going to want to go and talk stupidness about a judgment and say, well, okay, this is only a temporary order, as probably Jagdeo advised. And so they can still go and deduct the monies and that kind of thing. And the judge immediately, it is with urgency and forthrightness that he did it. Get him here. Because I have now seen the document that he has written. This is contempt in the face of the court almost. What is he doing here? This is contempt. Get him at 1 o'clock. And the marshal then went and get him. Yeah. He couldn't hide anywhere. Dragged him there. And well, I understand he begged and he said he can come by himself and he walk up. And then when he walk up the corridor, the court, look at the arrogance. Did you notice the arrogance?
Yes.
Oh, y'all take out a good picture of me and this and that. And he said, and then when he go in there and he see the judge face, the man boiled down completely.
Khemraj, the court in relation to the nurses' strike and the government deducting monies from the nurses' salaries for striking, the court ruled that they should repay the nurses. The government, of course, has appealed that case. So the case is still, in a sense, ongoing. But would not that ruling, or should not that ruling have influenced the government in this instance and say, well, the court has already signaled where it stands on this issue of deducting money from people's salary when they are on strike? But not a reasonable government has said, well, the court has already indicated where to go, and we shouldn't go down this road. Why, in the face of that, at least the High Court has ruled? Why in the face
it is callousness on the part of this administration, the vanguard of the working class. Could you believe? They're taking that attitude, although the judiciary is giving them so many cues. And not only that, too, David. It is that Barrett Jagdeo assented to the constitutional reform that indicated in 2000, and I got a constitution somewhere here, that says that you got a right to strike.
Yeah.
We have a constitutional right to strike. We got a constitutional right to collective agreements, right? And unlike very many of the other Commonwealth, Caribbean, and Commonwealth countries' constitutions, we got it in the 2001 process with Rupert Rupert and all of them. Yeah. So when you now giving meat to the right to strike means that you must not then exercise a right and then become money deducted out from that right. It is inherently incomprehensible and it is wrong. But this government wants to know the delaying tactic. It's delaying tactic. Just like how they take 3 years with the teachers to come up with anything, they now say, well, the matter is up for appeal. And so they might not pay because they might ask for what is called in law stay of execution. And then they're going to carry it to the CCJ because they feel that the CCJ, they're going to get more justice because they feel that the Sandil Kisoons and whosoever is ruling don't like them, So it is madness. But we have a different scenario completely in this country as a result of that robust reform constitutional process of 1999, 2000, and so on, which provided, whereas before we never had it in our constitution, the right to strike and the right to collective bargaining.
Yeah.
And so you really can't now go, once these nurses was out there protesting or whatever it was, not do secession of their jobs as a result of a trade dispute, right? What is called the trade union employer relationship that they're doing. This was not a wildcat strike.
Right,
This was a genuine trade dispute. In that context, they have not abandoned their jobs. They have not abandoned their contract of employ. They're doing things necessitous to ensuring a better contract of employ. So it's like they walk in. So this nonsense that some of them are talking, that once you strike, days pay should be deducted, is utter madness in a constitutional provision that got the right to strike.
That got the right to strike. Vince, I know I've been engaging Khemraj.
I always learn from Khemraj.
I beg pardon, but I'm coming to you here now.
But quickly, you asked a question of Khemraj and the law. When in my former job, I had tons of lawyers working for me. I had law departments on me, and I never forget the two things that I learned is I always ask, when they come before me to approve stuff, what is the intent of the situation? What is the intent of the law? And that example you mentioned, Khemraj, with that stamp, what is the intent of the law? And there are two things that goes along with it, is intent and reasonableness.
That's right.
Intent and reasonableness. And as long as you can consider those two in your decisions, that's what it, because you cannot write a law for every single circumstance that exists on this planet. You don't know what it is.
Sure.
You get millions of circumstances that you've never
unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah.
So it's all about what is the intent of the law.
That's right.
And reasonableness.
The reasonableness. Vince, let me ask you this, and Khemraj can take a bite at it too. We hear this government talking about crossover votes, appealing to the other side, and that's how they're going to win elections coming up. How can you be appealing to African Guyanese to come and cross over to go and vote for you? And you're being so brutal to teachers who are mainly African Guyanese, not totally. But then how can you be making the argument that these are people you want to cross over? These are people who are going to vote for you and keep you in power for the next 20 years. And you're being so brutal to them. What's going on there?
Well, I think again, it's because of our history and the arrogance. And I think you and I know, all three of us know, going way back, and we mentioned some examples with folks from the quarantine, they didn't vote for nothing else but the cup. We did the same thing in Linden. It doesn't matter. However, this election is the first of its kind in terms, this year is going to be the very first election where money is going to come into play, because both parties, before now, both parties really didn't have any money. It came with promises. It came, by, we're going to vote race. But I'm telling you, the PPP, and I hope that it doesn't work out, especially if you notice, they do have a strategy for doing that. If you notice the communities that they're going after, Linden and Buxton, especially Linden, they're targeting Linden big time. And they're handing out to especially influential people in the Linden community in terms of jobs. And we lost, we had one of our executives, I think he was even an MP. And then the next thing I know, the man up on the up on the stage at the last election, running the meeting for, you remember, one for, So I know he's got a big job running the Technical Institute of Linden, but he's not the only person. And when when you get those influential folks who were PNC or the opposition, then they influence their friends. And so this is the first time that we're going to have this type of a situation where money hopefully will not play a part, but it's going to be a factor, whether is a non-factor or just a slight factor. But this is the card that they're playing. This is the card they're playing, David. It's the money card for these handouts. But we've never tested this model before.
Khemraj? I mean,
no, I agree with that. There will be a base set of support that will hold on to their identities, as we would call them now. And there are going to be some independents who are going to be governed by the largesse that they're paid or promised. And then there are going to be those who are going to say, well, let us watch what the developments are here, or what were the PPP promises, and there were no developments. And so it is going to be in that context. But I fear, as Dr. Vincent Adams is fearing, that there is going to be a battering of the democratic ideal by virtue of the monies that they have. And let me tell you something, the PPP got leaders who know how to pay off. And they know very well that one of the strata of our society, I call it caste, literally, is that crony capitalist contractor class.
Yep.
They got a set of employees who they could buy. 500-600 people. They got their family members. Once they do well, they make big house and so on. And then they go and they do even the Jandi and the Mulvi proceedings and the Meiji Walk. And they can influence thousands of voters. And these elections, like all elections in Ghana, are going to be very close. 4,000 the last elections, couple thousand. They were a minority government in 2011. All of that. So it is very, very close. And you just got to buy 5,000, 6,000. And this is where the money is going to be spent, apart from the coastal areas within that contractor crony capitalist class. It will be spent with the Amerindians. And the Amerindians could be bought over too. And there it is. That is not democracy. That is the darker side of democracy.
The darker
and
side.
to the losers, it is going to create a lot of resentment and discontent. And that is why I know for a fact the Americans and the British and Canadians are very concerned about that, because they understand what it could bring. So although you go to the ballot box, you go to the elections, it's deemed free and fair, but long before the people put their X's there, their minds would have been made up as a result of all this kind of manipulation of the mind and money and so on. So it could be that which is going to matter now, and we have to be very cautious about it.
And here's why this could be. This is the big unknown. And I always use Linden, because Linden, is always predominantly PNC. Now, what has been happening? I mean, this is the very first time, and anytime you show that you're a PPP growing up, it was taboo. We had, every single PPP person in Linden. And when I see at the last election, folks walking with red shorts, they're identifying themselves now because they're probably getting money and jobs. But here, a lot of people are saying, well, you know what? They're still going to go back in that ballot box and vote for the PNC. But here's the problem. Now they've identified themselves.
Yes.
So there's no way they're going to want to go and vote back, because they're going to be afraid that there's going to be victimization if they, if they, let's say the PPP now that they've identified themselves with, if it loses. So those are the kinds of things, the unknowns that is, you really don't know what's going to happen this year. Next year election is going to be a test case.
Yeah, and talking about elections, on Monday, the elections cases are starting in the magistrate court, I think in front of Magistrate Daly, Leron Daly. That is the charges that were brought against Mingo and the people at GCOM, Carol Joseph, etc., etc. Those cases are starting on Monday. Thank you, Carol Joseph, for calling me, I think, earlier this week, because I'd asked Royce Dale about the cases, and Carol was listening. She said she had just come back from case preparation, and those cases are going to start 3 years later. They're going to start those cases on Monday. So I just want that information to go out in the public. It's going to be in the Georgetown Magistrate Court in front of Magistrate Daly. I suppose they would want people to go by. I know the teachers are on the road, but some of you can go by the court to give support for that trial or those trials that are starting. Vince, what's happening on the oil front? I noticed the court ruled against the Nuto Radzik, and the other sister's name is escaping me at the moment, who had gone to the court to seek an action against the EPA, and the court has ruled in favor of the EPA. Explain for me.
I didn't follow that because when was that? That was recently?
Yes, that was earlier this week. I think Monday.
Oh, yeah, look, I didn't follow the news this week.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Khemraj.
If I may state this, there is probably a procedural point that was raised that it ought not to be in that single court where there is one judge that should rule on that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the judge.
What was the case, Khemraj? I'm trying to remember. I was gone all week, so I was. What was the case?
The case to show the evidence of the $2 billion.
Yes. The extension that was given to, I think it was on the Lisa.
Yeah.
Because the court had ordered them to prove that indeed the bond was sent to the EPA.
Yes, I know what it is now. I know what it is. But
yes.
So let me. Well, go ahead. Sorry, Khemraj.
Well, I am saying that that in view of the appeal being carried to the full complement, and then they delegated it to one judge alone to make the decision on that issue. The lawyers, I think Mr. Eddie Lacou and so on, they made the point that it ought not to be heard by this one judge. You have to get more than one judge as part dealing with this matter.
Oh, okay. So there's
right. There is a technical legal point, and the judge indicated that yes, that indeed. So it is not as if they've lost. They can come back to the court into the full complement that the court has ruled ought to hear it as against himself.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
well, here's the big picture though. And I think we got to be careful we don't go down this rat hole about talking about the show of this $2 billion because it's really immaterial and irrelevant to the big case here, which is, if you recall, the big case is the Judge Kissoon's case for the unlimited parent company guarantee that I put into the law. I wrote the language, as a matter of fact, into the permit. And when I left, the PPP attempted to remove it, and that was when the two citizens took them to court. Judge Kissoon ruled overwhelmingly. Then obviously it was appealed.
That's right.
And while it was being appealed, but here's the presumptuousness of this government. While it was even after they lost the case, this government went and negotiated. The negotiation had started before for this to replace what we had put in there for unlimited coverage, meaning they're going to have to take care of whatever spill occurs. They're going to take care of that cost. It wasn't anything fancy. It was reasonable. Exxon had agreed to it, by the way. Exxon agreed to it and signed the permit. And as soon as I left this government, because Exxon probably went back to them, well, not probably, went back to them, you know, we're like the take it out because now, you know, we're the hook for this stuff and we can walk away. If they've got a big spill of $140 billion, similar to the Macondo spill, they can walk away right now because Exxon's signature, and our people need to understand, Exxon's signature is not on any document. There's nothing tying Exxon to it. What Exxon did, they formed a limited liability company, and by definition, that's what a limited liability. They formed these limited liability company to insulate the big companies from liability. Well, this limited liability company, Exxon Mobil, Guyana Limited, EMGL, they don't have any kind of an assets. And so that was why we hooked in Exxon. We say, if you do not sign this parent company guarantee to cover any spill, because your subsidiary, whose name is on everything, has, you know, they don't have anything. So that was why we hooked them in as the parent company. And as soon as I left, they decided that they were going to turn that, remove that. And that was what they lost in court with Judge Kissoon. So what happened was, even during the case, because what they did, they tried to change the permit. They went, the clause that we had in there for the unlimited guarantee for whatever it costs, they added a clause to say that they're going to determine what that parent company guarantee is. So they're going to define what it is. Well, Judge Kissoon threw that out because he said that's absolute nonsense. Yeah. It says you've got to cover it. So that was their argument, that we can define it, and Judge Kissoon threw it out. So what they did, they still went ahead, brazen enough, and negotiated that clause that he ruled against. They negotiated that clause to the $2 billion. So that's how they arrived at this $2 billion, and they're calling that a parent company guarantee. So now they say, well, okay, we got a $2 billion. When they went to the next second judge in the hearing for the appeal, he said, well, okay, in the meantime, while we're waiting on the appeal, show us this $2 billion that you say you got as an interim. So I like to call it is more like a bond. That $2 billion to me, it's more like a bond. You know, you got to show it to me that you have it while we're waiting for the unlimited parent company decision. Here is your bond of $2 billion. Show it to me. And up to now, they can't show it. You know, and they're bluffing all the time. Dattadin, Khemraj knows it. Dattadin jumped up and rant and rave in Congress. Then he said, all you got to do is go down to the EPA and you're going to see the document. And of course, Skycho News called their bluff. The next day, they go down to the EPA. And EPA said, who, me? You know, you got to go to court to get it. So that's how we ending up in the court now to see the damn document. And you and I know, we all know that if they had that $2 billion document to show, we would have seen a billboard from Jagdeo. We would have seen a billboard from Jagdeo with a big certificate. So we know that it doesn't exist.
Know that it doesn't exist. Dr. Vince Adams here. Khemraj, Lula came and he made a statement. He said, you know, you got to balance spending on infrastructure with spending on human beings. I reminded some comrades today, Lula is a trade union man, a union man.
That's
and
right.
He's visiting a country where the unions are on the road. And unlike his CARICOM counterparts who came, saw, and went, Lula did not come, see, left, and said nothing. He made what I consider to be a significant statement. Any comments there?
I would add that he came, he saw, and he conquered.
There you go.
He did, by virtue of his utterance there. Look, he is an extraordinary politician, and he has suffered all the punishment that Bolsonaro had done unto him and all of that. Crucified him literally. He's back as president. A country that he supported in relation to the Venezuela issue by going there on the north of Brazil and blocking off that road for any vehicle of a military type to pass and come to Guyana and so on. He loves Guyana. But he loves it so much to the extent that he can utter what is right and righteous. And it was right for him to say that indeed trade unions have a large role to play. It is because of trade unionism that wages and better working conditions have been granted to workers. He made it quite clear to Irfan Ali that, you know, you have to be balanced in your approach. Not almost got to capital. Almost, you know, what the man said in a 3-4 sentences there is what I took 45 minutes to talk in Parliament. How you must prioritize. And he did it powerfully as the president of the largest country in South America. And our neighbor, who Irfan can't have a hassle with or tell to shut up or anything, because that is one of our closely knit neighbor. He has sent 5 generals here to talk about strategies in relation to Venezuela and all of that. So when he now talks strategies about trade union, they must listen to him too, just like they listen to his generals. It is a deep, profound statement that he made. He's very much leftist, but what we see in the PPP now is not leftist. They left off. Them in leftist, them is left off, the working class. So it was a fantastic statement, and I welcomed it. And I hope that Irfan Ali at least will listen. Just listen to what the man is saying in relation to unionized workers and trade unionism and the statement that he made. I want a fuller report of it in tomorrow's newspaper or so.
Yes. Vincent, Lula, president of Brazil.
Statement. No, I agree with everything Khemraj said. I mean, it and I have said it because, you know, when I used to build budget, there always had to be a balance. We do not have look at our budget. Infrastructure is 58% of our budget, and I did some back of the envelope calculation. All you've got to do is take 1% or less than 1% of that 58%, and the teachers can get $100,000 each in raise. On the average, $100,000 could pay just from that 1%, and it has to have a balance. Here is the other thing. I mean, the paradigm, the new paradigm, the old days of infrastructure you build, they're gonna come and invest. That paradigm change. We figured that out. It's about education, and Exxon knows it. Exxon, I've been in training with the Exxon executives, and they know, because when you ask them, and I remember sitting with all the executives in these major companies, and we had these sessions at Harvard and MIT, Sloan. It was, how do we keep America competitive?
That's right.
So we had government executives sitting with corporate executive, and we would spend every 6 months. We would go there for 2 weeks, and the one thing that was on it wasn't debatable. You ask every single one of them and ask them, okay, what attracts you to invest in a country? Education, education, education. And you know what was interesting? And this was, we didn't find this out, and I can give you an example. Khemraj, I had even told Khemraj about this going way back, and Khemraj was even wondering to know how when they were in government, how they could get a program like that at MIT. But we studied, here's a good example, India and China. We had predicted in the 1980s that because we always look at which countries we got to compete with. We were looking at India to be the next superpower of the world because of one criteria. Guess what it is? Infrastructure. Because that was the old paradigm. And when we look at it, we say, what the heck happened here? How did China leapfrog over India? And you know what it was when we peel back that onion?
Was education.
The illiteracy rate of India was 39%. You know what it was for China? 9%.
Wow.
And then we start peel back that onion. We said, well, okay, India has some of the best tertiary schools. Like India Institute of Technology is comparable to an MIT. So we said, how the heck did that happen? when we look at China education system, it was more middle of the road, like technician level. You get a bachelor's degree, you come out. Whereas India was, you're going for their PhDs
Academics.
and so that was why their manufacturing in China took off, because of that technician level. So it's not only education, it's the level of education. And here's the other thing that we discovered in this new paradigm. Infrastructure was not even number two. You know what's number two? Follow the rule of law.
That's it. Yeah.
And the reason is when you ask them companies, well, how is that? They say, well, if you've got employees who follow the rule of law, they've got discipline, they're going to follow the rules of it, they're going to come to work on time, they're going to take ownership. Just those attributes made a difference. And then we had number three is infrastructure. So that's an old paradigm that they're using now with infrastructure. It's about education. This is where we need to be investing. We got a University of Guyana there that they do not even have the equipment and facilities that we get in high schools here in the United States. You know that, Dr. Now they do not even have proper bathrooms. You go to the UG. I mean, when I was in Guyana, you go there and you go into a toilet or anything. They do not have a single lab. Like a good lab. So, and then you're going to tell me you're going to spend money on this gold program, which is a correspondence program, and you got a university that you should be developing where, I mean, it's really a shame. So they've got everything backwards here, but it's one motivation. Okay? It's to give the people who are getting the money more money. It's their friends and families. Khemraj did some rough calculations. That's where the money is going. Mm-hmm. That's where the money is going. We still have...
And look, that education thing with gold, I have been commencing some discussions with some people. That thing looked like it got massive corruption too.
A long time. What do you think?
Yes. You sending how much? $6 billion on gold scholarship? Whatever it is. And then you talk and talk and talk. Who is getting this money? We need to know. For what is the quality of the service? Has there been an audit as to the quality of those scholarships program and all of that? And what generally is the take in relation to?
And are these institutions accredited?
Accredited. That's another thing.
Accredited. But it's a disgrace for you to be telling me you said $6 billion. They have the same amount of money that you had. Each of them have $4 billion. That's an insult. Gold program is $4 billion. UG is $4 billion.
Sorry,
that's
$4
an
billion.
insult. Yeah. That's an insult.
And you want to make your university unique. That is local content. You're going to get better teachers. You're going to get everybody with a $4 billion that is put there and so on. And then the development into a higher institution. No, they're going to give the scholarship money, $4 billion of it. And so it's bad use of money.
Bad use of money. Khemraj Ramjattan and Vince Adams here tonight, both executive members of the Alliance for Change. Khemraj, of course, is the leader of that organization, that political party. I remember, and I'm wondering whether Vince was there. I know your partner, Alert, was there when Khemraj came to Washington, when they were about to form the AFC.
Oh, no, I wasn't there. I know Ron was there. I wasn't.
Yeah, Ron, myself, and others. I think Khemraj was staying somewhere in Virginia, Northern Virginia.
That's correct. I was
there. It was a cold night, and we were there. Khemraj. It was back then. Those were.
I want to say that we must congratulate Ron and say how special and gratitude must go to him for helping in those initial years,
Yes, I remember Ron.
The State Department, Dr. Professor Shamir Ali, and Dr. Somar, and so on. They did a tremendous amount of work for us to see the right players in Washington. Senator Cardin and a number of congressmen that we went to the house, and it was Ron and Professor Shamir. Professor Shamir seems to know a lot of these fellas and their cabin crew, literally. And so we have done great as a result of all of that. And that is why, even up to last week, we when some of these congressmen and so on came, although they were pretty new faces, they knew the contacts and so on that we had as a party from Guyana. And that is why we are called to go to have courtesy calls with them and things like that. So we maintain that tradition, but it goes back with the work of these individuals.
Yeah, Khemraj, you were part of that opposition team that met with the U.S. Permanent representative at the United.
Yeah, well, we met with them.
Right. Talk to us a little bit about without giving secrets.
No, well, they're pretty transparent people, you know. It is not that they come to talk about secrets like how Jack Dale loves to talk secrets. No, they're pretty open. And they wanted to know some of our sentiments as to the political landscape in Guyana. They have gotten it from the government side. And we said that don't waste our time telling us what government told you. We know what government would tell you. We want to maximize the time as to what we will tell you now. And we told them about the destruction of the guardrails of democracy in Guyana. Public Accounts Committee being changed and rules being changed so that the scrutinizing of our monies can't be done thoroughly, because now 2 ministers got to be present at a meeting before a quorum can be had and all of that. And they were aghast because they didn't hear that from the government side. And we also talk about, because one of them, the Western Hemisphere person, Mr. Nichols, wanted to know about its security issues. And luckily I was there because as past public security minister, I indicated that we need lots more accountability in the security sector. And one of the things that provided that accountability as to what the government is doing and a check and balance is this Parliamentary Committee on Public Security, created by the Constitution. And the Constitution has it now as an express provision. And we put it in the standing orders of the Parliament. And after the first meeting in 2020, we have never had another meeting. So we can't ask the Commissioner of Police, the Fire Chief, the Prison Chief, Canoe Head, or anybody any questions at all. So he wanted to know if it was like the Congressional Security Committee. I said, exactly, that was what it is. And he said, they haven't met for 3 years? I said, yes, more than 3 years they have not met. And they were writing down notes and all of that. So indeed, we went into details about all the other dysfunctional commissions and committees and commissions still to be formed, like the Petroleum Commission and all of that. Jack Dale wants to control oil and so on now. So he's the one-man Petroleum Commission. And we told them that. And they said, wait, all these statutes provide, we said yes. And we didn't give them that time, but we had given the ambassador a dossier on all these matters. So they have that, they will have them. So it is important that we also utilize these internationalist congressmen and senators from over in America, because they are concerned. As a matter of fact, I had to tell them that the more stabilized security for Latin America and the Caribbean will ensure a more stable America. Because I luckily had read the Foreign Affairs magazine that recently came, the February month one that came for me. And it said that the cocaine and the heroin that goes into America via Latin America kills more Americans than all the wars that America had over the last 10 years. The opioids deaths as a result of the cocaine that goes in there. So we got to ensure that there's a security that don't kill the Americans like that, and so on. And we mentioned a lot of other things about Coast Guards and this and that and what. So it went down pretty well. They thought that we were very specific with what we were stating to them as issues that govern America and Guyana. And we then talk about the list, electoral list, because we said all the observer missions that came in 2020 indicated that that list got to be brand new, and so on. And they took notes, and so I think it went very well. Constitutional reform came up, and I said, yes, we're supporting it, but the government is delaying it. They're going to talk plenty, but they're not going to move quickly.
Khemraj Ramjattan, a leader of the Alliance for Change here, giving us a report on the meeting between the opposition team and the visiting dignitaries from the United States of America. Dr. Vincent Adams, as you wrap up, any developments on the oil spill? There seem to be some uncomfortable truth that are being bottled up.
Yeah, I'm afraid, that I hope that this doesn't go silent in terms of implications for Guyana. We have to find a way, and I hope that Khemraj and the opposition and everybody keep this hot. There's something that happened there that has this connection to certain individuals in Guyana that needs to come to the fore. There has to be an investigation, and an independent investigation on that. But on the other side, Jagdeo again is just lying through his teeth. He went, and when the question was asked about this spill, to put this spill into perspective, this spill, the numbers we're getting is about 30,000 barrels spill. We have a ship that comes through with Guyana's oil, one ship every 2 days at least, that is going to increase very soon to at least between 1 and 2 ships per day with 1 million barrels, not 30,000, with 1 million barrels. And every day, which means your risk has increased. And what we found out here in Tobago is that Trinidad and Tobago was not prepared. And this is a country that's been producing oil for over 100 years.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, we are even worse off, because when our spill response plan came to me at EPA, it was written by the Civil Defense organization, I refused to sign it. It was worthless. So if we have a spill in Guyana, it's going to be worse than Trinidad. And like I said, when you look at the magnitude, we're looking at 30,000 here that caused a national disaster versus 1 million barrels that passes through there every single day. And the one thing we learn in safety, especially when you're designing safety system, an engineer like myself or whoever, we can design systems for anything, any circumstance. You just put enough factor of safety, it's going to be safe. However, the one thing you can never design for is the human factor. It is the human factor. And all that happens is somebody comes to work drunk, or they had a bad night, they've got stresses, and the next thing you know, they run aground on a reef. You can never cater for that. That is why you've got to put a preparation in place as a condition. And that's, as to if something happens, and we do not have that. And that is where this whole situation here that we talked about is so important with the parent company guarantee.
Yeah.
I know what Jagdeo is lying about when the question came up, if we get what the man said last week? The man get up there, I spoke at length about it this morning. Oh, don't worry about that. We've got this 2.6 billion, which they've not shown. On top of that, the company has in assets $20 billion that we can seize. Well, let me tell the audience about this seizing of EMGL's asset. You remember what I told you about EMGL? There's a subsidiary of Exxon. They don't have any assets. Every single thing, the assets that they're accumulating is paid for by the government of Guyana. It's paid out of cost. When they take out that money, it's paid out of cost. As a matter of fact, the contract itself says if they leave or if the contract is terminated, all of that equipment the assets has to be turned over to us. So Jagdeo is spouting this nonsense, and we've been challenging him to, okay, if you know that there's a $20 billion that is outside of what the government is paying for, list it for us. List it. He started this thing about 2 years ago. He said it was $8 billion, then it increased to 12, then he said 16, and now it's up to 20. So he's trying to fool people about this assets that he's got to pay for a spill. It's absolute nonsense. We need to get to distract from the real issue of the unlimited parent company guarantee that Exxon, as the parent company, should be taken care of. That's where
Dr. Vince Adams here. Khemraj, you have the last word, your closing thoughts.
No, well, I'm glad that I'm on your show. I've had quite a lot to say today, not only in your show, but we had a lovely press conference today. And I've been meeting a couple of people at my home here in connection with a lot of other things, plus some clients. So I had a busy day. I want to say thank you very much, David, for keeping the program alive and ensuring that the education, very important, education, political education, and current affairs education is very vital. A lot of people get fooled by these elective despots, I call them, because they are not paying attention to the issues in and around. Today, clarity is power. And the people that makes it unclear are the types like the Jack Deos. We try now to create clarity, because with that clarity, we're going to be far more powerful. Thanks, and a good night.
Thank you. And thank you, Khemraj, for coming through. Vince, as usual, thanks for sacrificing your Friday night.
I enjoy it. Always enjoy it with Khemraj.
All right. See you next week. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And there you have it there, the AFC team tonight. And of course, it's not for us here, it's not party. It is what they bring. They happen to belong to the same party, but what they bring in terms of education and information to our program. I want to thank you all for staying with us another week. Those of you who missed me last night, I'm back. I had to go and fix the torch lights yesterday and didn't feel up to it last evening, but the torch lights are now fixed, and everything is back in order. There's an old calypso, they say there's a blind calypsonian called Almanac, and they had a party, and Almanac is a blind calypsonian. He couldn't see the cups to get his drink at the party. So since he couldn't see the cup, he had to feel for the cup, feel for cup. Well, I no longer have to feel for cup. I'm able to see the cups better now. Yes, the eyes are your torchlight, your headlights, your whatever. As you grow older, you encounter some of the old people difficulties, but that's what the science is there for, right? And so thanks for those of you who wished me well, and they're back in business. So I don't have to peep anymore. Have a nice weekend, and I'll see you all back on Monday. As usual, love is abundant. As my old teacher and friend, Kwesi and Kofi used to say, in reckless, love in reckless abundance.